Okay, guys, hello and welcome back to Breakdown Talk from Temi, an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Today, as you can see, we've got a new guest with us, Kester Goh, co-founder at Axial. And Kester, what I want you to do for us, just to start off, give us a little bit of a background of who you are and a little bit in just a couple of sentences, your companies. So, because you've got there Axial and you've got Magnet. Tell us a little bit about these.
Yeah. So actually, Magnet is the main holding company. So we developed a proprietary Axial Flux technology there. And actually that technology can be deployed in a number of verticals. But so we, as a matter of fact, originally we started building a generator for a wind turbine. So, and it was like a quite large 1.6 meter diameter. And so it's slow turning generator. But pretty soon we saw that there was a very slow market. And so we pivoted to the automotive industry. And so instead of a generator, now we are designing and developing motors, electric motors. So where a generator transforms movement of the wind into energy, the motor does exactly the opposite, right? It's the energy from the battery. That's translated into movement, but the main technology remains the same. So we started, we pivoted rather to the automotive industry. That's through our subsidiary, Transactional. Yeah. And then more recently, we saw also a lot of interest from the air mobility industry. And that's where we set up Axial. So Axial is still a fairly young team. We're with about 10 people. Whereas Transactional is about 40 people today.
Very nice. That's why when I was doing my investigation into your companies, there was quite a lot of information there, obviously, with your different companies that you've got going on. Axial is definitely one that I'm very interested in personally. It's something that is one of my interests, and it's definitely, for me, feels like a company of the future. Before we go into talking about what you're doing more at all of these companies, first, I want to know, who is Kester? I want to know who the man behind the machine is. What is something people don't often know about you?
So I graduated, so I have a master in law. I graduated in 98. That's a long time ago. That was the first internet bubble. It was the internet, something new. And so I started working at a big law firm and doing lots of transactional work. So I did a lot of M&A, IPOs, private equity, and also venture capital. And that's how I kind of accidentally rolled into this wonderful ecosystem of tech startups. And pretty soon it became clear to me that just only doing the legal work wasn't something that I wanted to do the rest of my life. So after 3-4 years, I stopped working actually as a lawyer, and I became independent. And I started working for startups as well as for VCs. So I sat on both sides of the table. Initially, still a lot of transactional legal work, but gradually evolving and becoming more and more an entrepreneur myself.
Tell me a little bit about that process. So what kind of skills did the experience in law give you to be able to be a better co-founder?
It teaches you how to think differently, or in a way that is quite structured and helpful. Because also what I know while I was still practicing, that towards the end of my career as a lawyer, more and more customers started calling me, not really with legal problems, but just because they had to, they would literally say like, I'm just calling you, I need to do some brain picking. So it's just have a dialogue with them, interact, and really bring things down to the essence. And if you are able to bring things down to the essence, things become also more clear, because all the clutter is gone, and then you know what the decision evolves around, or what the key points are to decide upon. It's very helpful.
And tell me a little bit more, Kester, about, you said you've sat on both sides of the table. Tell me about the importance of this and how this has helped you. What do you maybe know which people who haven't sat on both sides of the table know?
Yeah. So, I think, look, when I started working, initially I never wanted to become a lawyer because in my view, a lawyer was somebody who went to court and litigated. And it's only with the end of my studies that I actually discovered, that there is also something like, let's say, transactional lawyers, where you actually don't litigate, but you transact. And there's a big difference, because if you litigate, you have opposite interests and you want opposite outcomes. When you do transactional work, you have opposite interests, but in the end, you both want the same outcome, mainly a signed contract, and a start of a collaboration. So from that perspective, it's really very useful if you have sat on both sides of the table, because then you understand what the VC, what the financial investor wants, what is driving him, what are his important points, and which points will he probably give in, because in the end, he also wants to do the deal. He believes that you're a company, a startup with a lot of prospects, with a bright future. So he also wants to invest. So you just need to understand, okay, how does a fund work? Where does he need to protect his investors' interests? And so where is his room to move in the negotiations fairly limited? Which are the ones that he would like or is trying to take home, but he'll give in if he wants the deal bad enough?
I mean, so not a first-time founder, got lots of experience under your belt. How do you know if you are entrepreneurial worthy? Is there such a thing where you were either entrepreneurial mindseted or not?
That's a very interesting question. And what I also see, maybe not often, but quite regular, is people who are half entrepreneur, semi-entrepreneur. And I mean, it's not a bad thing, but you should just realize it. And nowadays there are a lot of ecosystems where you can try. Big companies are looking for this kind of profile of people who like to be an entrepreneur, but still need this safety net, prefer this cushion. I think as an entrepreneur, you need to be comfortable with being all out in the open and being comfortable with taking the risks. And that's something that is not given to everybody. A lot of persons will just die with the stress out of stress. And I think that's something you can feel it yourself very fast, very easy, whether you're comfortable with that situation, yes or no.
Kester, how do you cope with it? Is there some kind of methods that you have? Is there meditation? Is there just realizing that it is what it is? Your co-founder, what kind of methods have you got to coping with the stress? We've got lots of new time founders and people looking to found companies on this, listening to our show. So tell me, what would be your recommendations to them?
I think the way I coped with it, now since 98, so it's more than 25 years. It has evolved over time. I think initially is just move on, work harder, and don't think. if you work, you work 20 hours a day, then you don't have time to think about. Now I would say it's more like, try to be less focused on the outcome, but just try to make the journey as successful and pleasant as possible. And just knowing that you did whatever it took and that you did your very best, that's good enough. And you don't always control the outcome, right? It can depend on luck. It can depend on the macroeconomy. It can depend on the vertical you're in, market dynamics. There are so many factors you don't control. So just focus on the ones you do and try to do your best there and try to enjoy the journey. And yes, I also meditate daily. It definitely helps me to stay grounded.
Tell me a little bit about the luck part. So there's a quote which I heard not too long ago: "The harder I work, the luckier I seem to become." How much does luck play a part in making sure that your startup survives the first few years?
There's a small book, Smart or Lucky. And the main takeaway is you have to be, if you have become successful, you have to be smart enough to know that you got lucky. So, it's maybe not nice to hear, but unfortunately, I think luck plays quite a big role. But of course, it's also true what you said, what you just quoted. Like the harder would be your work, the more lucky you get. Yes, I believe that's also true. If you put in the work, you opportunities will cross your path. The thing is, you should still be sharp enough and not with your head too deep down into things to see those things coming along. So I've learned it's all about balance. So it's, you need to work hard, but you should be careful not to work too hard. Yeah, I think that's very important. The other thing, one of the most recent things I came to realize, and that I would say is also a very piece of advice for starting entrepreneurs, is that the chance that you have a successful outcome of when you start a startup, one of the main drivers is apparently also the vertical, so the application or the industry in which you operate. And that is something that, you can do your diligence, right? You can research it, you can think about it, rethink about it, talk to people in the field, and really understand what you are getting in and what the challenges are of that particular industry. And then you should be brave enough to say, okay, I'm pulling out. I'm not, and it's hard, right? Because suddenly as a first-time entrepreneur, that it might be, he's chickening out. No, I think it's much braver to say, okay, I'm starting, you dive into the market, you prototype, whatever, and then after 6 months or 9 months, you say, no, I'm doing that. Because I have learned some things that point me in the direction of, you better get out because it's the wrong market or whatever. So I think, and that requires a much braver decision than just saying, I'm in there and it's too late, it's got to continue.
I totally agree. It's one of those points where it reminds me of the picture, the image where someone's hacking away underground basically at the soil, and then they just turn around just before they get to the gold. But it is that point where people think, oh no, if I keep on hacking, it's right there. But it actually may never come. And speaking to a lot of you guys on here on our podcast, it is, you guys say that your startup is your baby. And it's very difficult just to kind of leave it and say, okay, I've done everything I can, let's move on. But you did say about pivoting at the beginning. You spoke about pivoting. We'll speak about that in a second. What I want to know, let's just go straight back to the beginning of the foundation of your company. What inspired you to take this course?
It probably applies to most entrepreneurs. It's almost out of necessity because you just don't fit into in the big corporate world. I often say, like, I feel very grateful and lucky that I got to know this world of tech startups, because otherwise, I would have, I would have stayed a lawyer and I would be unhappy, I think, in my professional life, or I would have moved on to big corporates, and there you have just too many rules to follow and too many processes, and you have to watch your back and you have to be diplomatic, and there's a whole set of rules there that actually
different world.
It slows you down, and it for an entrepreneur it feels like you're not doing anything. It slows you down. Things are moving too slow. There are too many rules you need to take into account instead of just doing the work. I think, and that's a story you hear from a lot of entrepreneurs, right? It's just because we don't fit in the normal corporate world.
For sure. Absolutely. It's a completely different world, different set of mentality. Tell me, let's go right to the beginning of Magnex. How did it look at the beginning? What was your idea when you set out? Did you manage to accomplish your idea, or did you pivot completely so the idea changed?
So we are with 3 co-founders. So Peter is I would say the inventor. And then you have Dan, who is in charge of all the commercial topics, and then myself more in the financial legal topics. And so the overall strategy we do with the 3 of us. And that's typically also the kind of setup that I always look for. So unless you are Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, it's almost impossible to have all those three qualities in one person united. And it's much easier to find three persons who together are very complementary. Who can
there are difficulties in that, isn't there, as well, though? Because obviously a lot of the people that come on, they tell me that my co-founder is like a second marriage. You've obviously you're in 2 marriages at work there. What's the difficulties that come with that?
But yeah, it's definitely challenging. We have had our issues as well, and mainly those things start to boil up when you are so preoccupied and are working so hard that you barely communicate with each other anymore, and so you make assumptions about the others, and you don't know anymore, what is going on in their head. Obviously, in each of our heads, a lot is going on. So it's very important, to maintain that communication. So we have like weekly founder meetings. And sometimes we have an agenda and we go over the agenda, and sometimes there is no agenda. And if the meeting ends after 5 or 10 minutes, that's fine as well. If we just chit chat, that's fine as well. But we do need to have those regular, meetups just to make sure that we, keep in sync, basically. Yeah, and it's a push and pull, because obviously if we would all be on the same line as well, professionally we would not be so successful or not so complementary. It's exactly because, that we keep each other in check and balance that we advance.
But I understand a difficult task, but a worthwhile one, most definitely. Just tell me about the original MVP. How did it look at the beginning? Did it change much? How many times did you iterate on it?
So originally, Peter was building like the generator for a wind turbine in his garage. And then Dan and Peter, they actually met in front of the school gate because their kids went to the same school. I knew Dan from a previous startup in which we both worked. And so that's how we teamed up. And so Peter finished the generator. And we went out to the market and we saw that, the industry was interested, but they were very hesitant to adopt the new technology. In the meantime, we saw that we got a lot of inbound leads from the e-mobility market. So that's, I think, especially in Europe, tech entrepreneurs, they tend to stay under the radar too long and don't dare to market their product because it's not ready yet.
Compared to where? Compared to where?
The US. Compared to the US. In the US, they are very good in slideware, and even though they under the hood there is nothing yet, they go out to the market, they talk to the market, and I think that's very important. So,
what is it? Is it confidence? Is it?
No, I think it's mentality. It's like being afraid that you will disappoint people or not be able to show them something. But it's important to interact with the market. I mean, you don't have to say. We never said that they could buy the product, right? We said we were working on a product. Would you be interested? These are the specifications of the product based on the simulations we made. Yeah, and also in the beginning, the way we marketed our technology, and that's actually a thing. We didn't market a product; we marketed a technology. We basically asked the customers, like, tell us what you would do with it. If we tell you, look, this is what the technology can do. What would you use it for? And so we learned a lot from the market, and that's how we saw that e-mobility was far more interested in our technology than the market of wind turbines. And so that's why we made the pivot.
And you spoke there at the beginning about Axial, and you co-founded Axial because you saw the need for it. People were needing it. Now a team of around 10. Tell me a little bit more about Axial and what was that need? What drove you guys to pursue this avenue as well?
I think on the level of Magnax, we got more than 3,000 inbound leads, and it was very diverse. So yes, a lot of e-mobility, some wind as well, wave energy, zeppelins, jetpacks, wind mixers, cranes. Yeah, you name it. a lot of things have an e-motor if you think about it. And so obviously it was very important to focus. So that at a certain point we said, okay, we're going to focus on automotive. But we still had also people from e-mobility. So it's mainly like VTOLs, so vertical takeoff and landing, or short takeoff and landing, which is a more classic airplane. And VTOL is more like a passenger drone. Think about passenger drone. So we had quite a lot of interest. And one of those companies reached out to us and said, no, sorry, I mean, it's very important as a startup. We need to stay focused. We're focusing on automotive, so we can't supply you with any prototypes or anything like that. But that company just kept on coming back because they said, yeah, seriously, we'll consider the automotive prototypes you have. We understand you don't have time to build one specifically for us, for the air mobility industry. But, what is out on the market today is just so inferior and doesn't satisfy our requirements that we are basically willing to try these motors.
Sure.
Please just supply them to us. And that's how actually Axial started, because then we said, okay, well, if you understand the risks and if you understand that these motors are not airworthy at all, they're not designed to work in a VTOL, we're willing to go into this journey with you. Also because we felt, they were a startup themselves and they had to go through all this journey, and we felt that they really understood that we had to go through this co-development. If you talk about the whole propulsion system, so the motor still stays ours, but on a propulsion level system, it's where you really work together towards getting from technology to a product. And I think that's very important. Probably with a big company, they expect a mature, ready product. Well, we're not there. We're a technology provider, and we are looking for customers who understand where we are and who are willing to go through that journey together. And
Kester, how do you envision that role of electric in a hybrid aircraft powered by your technology? How do you envision it revolutionizing transportations, aerial ride sharing? What do you see? What is the vision?
So, I think first of all, it's very important that electrification also happens there, right? That we stop burning kerosene, and it's just a much cleaner solution. And I think there's also a real market for it. If you look at the traffic jams in the big cities, if you look at how much time gets wasted with just bridging a couple of miles sometimes, I think there is a real opportunity there to fill a hole in the market where today people are asking for a solution, but it's just too expensive, too cumbersome. We need to lower the threshold.
It is definitely something of the future, like I said at the beginning. What about given the noise and cost issues of which are associated with traditional helicopters? Can you elaborate on how your company and the technology aims to provide a quieter and more cost-efficient alternative for this mobility?
First, the lawyer in me should say that I have no technical background, so a small disclaimer. But in general, Axial Flux, maybe we should talk a bit more about our Axial Flux technology. So today, almost all motors, electric motors, are radial flux motors. But we didn't invent Axial Flux. Faraday even already built an Axial Flux motor. So it's something that has existed for a very long time. But it had a number of challenges. One of them was mechanical. And so in the academic world, if you do the electromagnetic simulations, you get very nice results, far superior above those of radial flux. But when you try to build the motor, and especially the bigger the motor, the more challenging it becomes. It turns out that it's just very hard to cool. So if you can't cool the motor, you can never reach the efficiency and the electromagnetic simulations, because the motor heats up and you need to slow down. So that was one of the challenges, and Peter solved that challenge. So we have a very effective cooling system. The other thing why all motors became radial flux motors was because it was very hard to industrialize axial flux motors. So it required a lot of manual labor, and actually it wasn't that hard to make. So a lot of engineers in their spare time, they can build an axial flux motor in their garage, but it's just a lot of manual labor. So you couldn't offer it to the market at a competitive price. And so that's the second problem that we solved. So we use standard machinery with standard industrial processes to build our motors, and that's because of the design of our motor, and that's also patented. So our cooling system is patented, and also the design of a motor is patented, which puts us in a very strong position.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the important things is of course the power and torque density, and so these are the things that axial flux really gives much better results. But it also implies that it's a lighter motor. A lighter motor also implies you use less material, and less material is a very big part of the cost of an e-motor. If you can offer a lighter motor for the same power density, so for the specs that are required, you offer them a lighter motor, so that translates into longer range or more place. Lighter motor, so the battery will last longer, right? It also translate in a lower cost because it means less material. So by nature, axial flux at same volume production will be cheaper than radial flux.
Tell me a little bit about the future. I know you said you're not not tech professional per se, you're more in the law parts of the business. But tell me, where do you predict this kind of ability for this to start happening in the future? How far away from flying kind of Ubers, these kind of things?
That's pretty hard to predict. I mean, you probably know the Gartner hype cycle. I think we're pretty high in that hype cycle now. So it's very well possible that we will still experience the crash down, right?
Yeah.
But eventually it will get there. But I don't dare to make any predictions on how long it will take. It's sure that a lot of money is being poured in that industry today. But if you look at startups also in cloud computing, there you also saw that the first data centers, they almost all went bankrupt, and it was the second and the third generation of data centers who could build on the infrastructure that was actually paid by the first generation that became very successful. So it's very well plausible that you will have the same here.
And I guess it's not just on the technology and the means of building these types of machinery, it's also on the ability for legislation and all these kind of processes to be in place. Tell me, in order to finish our conversation today, what I want to know from you, from being, as I said, you've got a lot of experience under your belt, and we've got a lot of new founders listening to our podcast. What would be the thing which you wish someone would have told you right at the beginning when you started out on your founding startup journey? What is that thing that you wish someone told you, this information, which would have made everything so much easier?
Okay. Well, so actually I'm not only doing the legal side of things, but also the financial side of things, also fundraising strategy, things like that. I think one of the main points that I experienced is that it takes you the effort to raise 100K, 1 million or 10 million, it's almost the same. So you should sometimes just raise a bit more money than you need, because the effort, fundraising is a lot of effort, right? It takes a lot of effort. It defocuses you completely of your business. So you want to limit it as much as possible. Sometimes founders don't want to take too much money because it dilutes them, and they prefer to raise more at a higher valuation later on. But I think you should also factor in the defocus and that it brings, and also the risk, right? Like, for example, we raised 20 million in May of last year. We didn't need 20 million at that point in time. We didn't even need to raise at that point in time, but you could just feel that the market was at the peak and that things would become more difficult. So I'm very glad that we did it, because it puts us now in a more comfortable position. And today fundraising is much harder. Valuations came down. So it's there to raise a bit more, then what you need, accept that you dilute it. That's the price you pay for a bit more comfort, but it might also be that little bit of extra money that will help you survive. Because I mean, in one of the first startups we raised like 9 million. We kind of closed our round. There was one investor that absolutely wanted to get in with, and it was like a ticket of 1.5 million. So we were quite reluctant to accept it. In the end, we did. And then, the internet bubble in 2000 kind of exploded. And it was the last 1.5 million that got us through those difficult times. So had we not accepted it, we would not have survived. And in the end, the company was sold for quite a nice amount to Symantec. So it became successful, but it was the last 1.5 million that pulled us through.
Amazing. I mean, that's incredible advice for everyone listening. Kester, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to pick your brain on my side. Thank you very much for letting me do that. And I wish you and your companies all the best in the future.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, and I wish you the best.